Oh, I appreciate you guys all coming out today. To me, this is a fascinating topic because I'm always so entertained when I come to these, the bandwidth of companies interacting with each other. And I think social media is kind of the glue that brings a lot of it together, especially community and content and transparency. And Alex, we'll start with you. I think just overall, your company does a really good job of kind of bringing a lot of these personalities and bettors together. Where do you see this space going in the next couple years as more states get involved, more people want to bet, and they go to social media? That's the first place anyone goes when they want to find out a score, when they want to find out who their favorite celebrity is talking about, and it just kind of, again, the glue that brings all of the sports betting community together.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, right? And everyone's trying to figure out what the next year or 18 months or 2 years is going to bring. I think that the audience for sports betting, by and large, is a very quantish audience, right? You're going to get people who are just interested in throwing down a bet, but by and large, a lot more data-hungry people. And I think that verification is going to become a thing, where rather than jumping onto a social media platform like Twitter and claiming any sort of incredible ROI or win rates or units gained or really whatever you want to try and do to draw attention to yourself, where people are going to start demanding verification of those records, right? And whether that's through use of the blockchain or some sort of the ability or the lack of ability to delete tweets or revise them. I think that verification and transparency in social media is going to be something that gets bigger.
Anika, community is something you stressed a lot, building that community together. What do you think that looks like for you in a betting space?
I mean, I think for us, we're looking at WONDR Nation, we look at it from two perspectives. One, figuring out through data, as Alex mentioned, who's actually betting on our platform, and then also who do we want to bet on a platform, and then where are they actually consuming content. And so in many cases, it's a combination of not just social, but I think we heard from the panel before, it's a combination of traditional. And so how do you blend that to create authentic and connected conversation with those players based on the type of information they want to consume? Some do want kind of the numbers, more want to be part of the community and bragging rights, but really just understanding at a more fundamental level, how do players want to engage and connect, and then facilitating that.
Cooper, this might sound silly, but does winning matter here?
Yeah, I mean, I think it matters to some degree. As a very social platform, like we try to lean on community and transparency, and mainly community and bringing players under one umbrella, having them kind of drive the conversation, and then lean on influencers to drive the content. I think as the industry as a whole kind of keeps moving forward, transparency is definitely going to become a bigger factor, and there's going to be platforms that solely focus on transparency. So at SoBet, we kind of focus on the community aspect and bringing them to one platform and letting them kind of drive that conversation of transparency.
Jeremy, running a 24-hour sports betting network is probably exhausting. Sports does not stop. Gambling does not stop. The market does not stop. But that intersection of kind of talent and transparency, I think, is something SportsGrid does very well. Where do you see that going for your network in the future?
It's very important to us. We believe in three things at SportsGrid, and that is content, community, and commerce. And for social media, that really brings the community aspect into the equation. And there is no better area right now that delivers a better live sports experience than social media. And as an always-on network, one of our best performing shows is a show called In-Game Live, which happens during the course of games. So it is an area where our community members can actually interact live with hosts, and that actually will end up shaping our broadcasts.
Yeah, I'm fortunate here that I've had a lot of experience in the social media space. I think social media is one of the reasons that I've been able to have success in this industry, and I do think it's paramount, because that's where you gain a lot of your users from, is you attract them from the various spaces. And Alex, I think that, to me, is where you guys see social media going in the future, what's the hardest challenge that you faced when you're trying to bring people onto a platform that they're not familiar with, get them familiar, and have them trust you in 140, I guess now a little bit more than 140 characters?
Yeah, well, I think the first key is to talk trash about all of them. That's user acquisition, right? Everyone wants to know about that, whether you're pitching, whether you're talking, whether it's my mother, it's user acquisition, right? So it's a delicate balance, right? There's always money that can be spent, and every marketing agency out there is going to tell you how paid advertising, properly targeted and properly spent, is going to be as effective now as it ever was, and I think to some degree that's probably true. But everyone wants to talk about organic growth, virality, right? People who come to you not because you pay for them, but organic growth, people who find you because what you're offering really sort of delivers a user experience that they can't get anywhere else. So beyond sort of your classic paid advertising, I think that you're really just driven to iterate and to offer the best possible user experience and put yourself out there as much as possible.
Anika, is there a saturation point with social media where it's in our face constantly, it's a pervasive media, we turn on our phone, anyone we follow can tell us anything, and we either have to mute them or block them or respond to them? Is there a saturation point with social media with gambling? Because let's be honest, it can be addictive. It can be a very difficult thing to manage if you have an addictive personality. Where do you see that saturation point coming into the equation?
Oh, I think from a saturation point, I look at it a little bit differently. Because there's so much content, there's all these rabbit holes that you can go down. And so part of it, it's easy for you to find your specific community of people. And so in some cases, there's all the saturation, but what happens is that through preference and finding kind of your group, I think there is a connection point that happens there with the content, because you have so many different areas and so many niche populations that it's easier to find that. I mean, I think as a marketer and as an operator, it becomes harder because then your player base is so fragmented there, because you don't know, there's not, like, you can't go to ESPN and saying, okay, all my players are here, or you can't go to a specific hashtag on Twitter and say, this is how I reach my players. I think it becomes, the saturation really, I think, makes it less centralized way to really connect with players because they're everywhere.
Cooper, it's a really young audience too. Most of the bettors are in their millennial or in their younger than millennial stages. Do you see that changing over time? Do you think it's going to continue to be, we have to find a way to connect with the youngest bettors on social media, and eventually we'll phase out some of those people in my 30s and 40s generation? Because now, again, about to turn 21, you want to see those bettors come right onto your platform.
Yeah, I think tech and media is always driven by the younger generation. I think TikTok, what we've seen, has been revolutionary across the board. But a big thing that we're focusing on at SoBet is just creating independence for these creators instead of having for them to rely on bigger media companies to make their money. Because a lot of these girls and gals out there are working hard, creating content, creating quality content, and the ones in the sports betting space are focusing hard on analyzing games, really studying where they can find an edge. So we feel it's important for them to have a place to monetize that community, to reward them for the hard work that they're already doing, and potentially even reach higher ceilings than they would at a traditional media company.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I mean, what we're seeing now is there's a shift between influencers having a lot more power than some of the traditional companies, because they are the people, we keep on talking about authenticity, but they are bringing the real authentic voice, and that's who people are connecting and relating to. And so in many cases, it's letting the influencers and letting the content creators help guide that conversation, as opposed to dictating, this is how I want to connect, or this is what I want to say. Because I think that type of interaction between a player and a company is gone.
I'm glad you mentioned influencers, because Jeremy, you have a lot of them on your air every day, and they're advocating for their specific positions, whatever bets they have, whatever angles they want you to look at. And a lot of people that probably tune in want that confirmation bias of, hey, this is what I believe, and then you hear someone else on TV saying it, and it allows you to kind of go along with what they're saying a little bit harder. Is that an avenue where you see SportsGrid playing a big part?
So confirmation bias is an issue with all forms of content, and I think we're all guilty of it, but it works two ways. Sometimes it's what you hear, and oftentimes it's what you don't hear. So at the end of the day, we have a multi-pronged strategy. We have to cover every single game, given that we have 18 hours. So oftentimes we do get people that are talking about positions that they might not be taking. And the other strategy that we're enabling right now is we're starting to produce content that is specific to each social platform. And this goes back to what you two were just saying. We often talk about the composability of content. And right now we hold this opinion that content is not necessarily composable. And you see that with influencers. Influencers tend to optimize for one specific platform, and somebody that has a huge following on TikTok often won't have a big following elsewhere. So I do think that you have to engage with those specific influencers, and you have to have them promoting your agenda and the content that you want that's specific and unique to their environment. Otherwise, you're just never going to resonate with your audiences.
Yeah, and I think the conversation of confirmation bias is obviously true. And like Jeremy was saying, sometimes analysts are putting out information they're not necessarily putting action on. But I think the important piece is they're doing the work to put out quality information, and then they're also preaching responsible gaming habits. So they're not telling viewers and followers to do these crazy things that'll lead them down roads to where they're now they're becoming addicted to gambling in unhealthy ways. So I think that's a big part of it as well. But you can drive that conversation through influencers and use the next generation of influencers to help create responsible gamers.
TikTok is tough. I've tried TikTok. Very difficult medium to get invested in if you don't have that, and it's almost a completely different topic in itself. But Alex, to me, I think when we look at influencers betting, and especially ones that don't have specific gambling experience, ones that are just partnering with these companies, but you see this very popular person in media come out with a wager that they like or come out with an angle that they like on a specific game, and it's crowdsourcing in a sense. How can companies get away from that where they're still bringing in media people and celebrities that can drive traffic to their platform, but they're not just leading them to a wager that isn't quote unquote sharp?
Yeah, it's one of the really tough ones, right? Specifically on Twitter, and it keeps. I mean, obviously TikTok has exploded, but the very nature of social media and the Twitter algo in particular, right? And we've seen this well outside of sports betting, is that they're interested in often the most bombastic content, right? The most controversial stuff. They're not necessarily trying to push what's going to make you think or what's actually going to lead to analytical conversations or even what's going to win. They want to see the 15-way parlay, and then for you to put down that you put down 50 cents to win $50,000, which is great and it's exciting. But again, to Cooper's point, right? If what you're trying to do is win, then it's not all that useful. And the Twitter algo and social media like it can actually serve to kind of put to the forefront the people who don't know, but who know about marketing. So for BettorOff, right? That's a major part of the idea that there's no algo pushing you forward. There's no marketing spend that you can do to kind of put yourself higher up on the leaderboard. Your win rates are what dictate where you are on the leaderboard. And I think that going forward, again, being able to verify and have transparency into the picks that you're making, not just to throw it out there and have people sort of follow it and yell about it is going to be key.
Yeah, transparency is a big one, and I've battled with that in my career early on. I've been betting on sports since I was well below the age that I was allowed to. Now that I'm actually giving out picks for a living, it's a responsibility, and I think not everyone feels that weight of responsibility the same. And I think the question is, how do we, invest in companies that get that line of thinking and not just overall want to just throw something up there because it's going to get a lot of clicks. Oh, this 10-team parlay is going to get a lot of clicks. In general, gambling on sports is pretty boring every day. It's very disciplined. It's very regimented. There's not a lot of flashiness to it. Obviously, when you win, that's great, but there's a lot of losing involved too. how do you kind of integrate the day-to-day monotony of gambling, which again is not very sexy to put out there on social media every day, but that's what I think people do relate to. I'll leave that open to anybody.
Yeah, I think it's a balance, right? Like, obviously, everybody bets on sports for the entertainment value at the end of the day, right? You want to see your bet hit. You want to see the anytime touchdown cash because that's the most electric bet in sports. But it's important to preach, like, there are strategies that are profitable. There is discipline that you need to put in place to instill good habits. Is there always going to be a place for things like parlays, for things like anytime touchdowns? Sure. But should you be doing that as a sole means to make money? No, probably not. But I think as that information grows, it needs to be put on platforms that can reach audiences, and especially the younger audience as well.
And I think also it's about creating credibility, so building those relationships and alliances with your company, with the influencers that you know are credible, that have that, and then creating some of the engaging content around that person or around that topic. Because you said, like, the monotony of the sports betting is true, but there are still creative formats that I believe that you can use. But a lot of that, it comes down to collaboration and the creativity of the teams that you have and the different formats that you can put it into. And so, but I think it starts with that credibility and making sure that if you're getting influencers or you're getting content creators, that they're aligned with your values and that you also know that they have credibility with their followers too, because that's the quickest way. A lot of these things will self-correct because cancel culture is real, and as soon as someone decides that what you're saying is invalid, that's it. So.
Yeah, gambling Twitter is definitely real. Jeremy, how do we balance the monotony of what this is every day and trying to promote people that are credible, but also there's still a media element to this. There's an entertainment element to this. That is a very tricky balance, especially when you're running, again, a 24-hour gambling network that just does not sleep. What's that balance look like?
So we have two different formats. We try to stick to news and be very factual because, again, it's not possible for all of our hosts to have action on every single game. So as long as you're providing data-driven insights, I think that that's one good balance. The other component is we have to recognize that as a network, when we have opinion shows, we're doing entertainment. And that's something that I think a lot of our hosts do recognize, that they're up here, they're giving information, but it's, the sports betting that draws you in, but it's kind of stay for the entertainment, stay because you like the host, and they have, those characteristics that kind of draw you in.
Yeah, and I think that's an important aspect to it because he's saying basically people are driven through the entertainment values, and I think that's generally where sports media is going to go in the future, right? Like right now, I think sports betting media and sports media are a little bit separate, and you see it merging. ESPN has wagering shows, all the analysts make picks on games. But I think in 10 years, when we're going to look at it, sports media as a whole is going to be traditional sports media, sports betting, daily fantasy, and the companies that are able to leverage all four of those and become a platform that delivers on all four of those are going to be the companies that succeed, like Jeremy's saying.
Yeah, I agree with both Cooper and Jeremy. I think that, look, this is not the first place we're seeing this, right? Sort of that gray area, which can be dangerous between what is fact and what is entertainment, right? Sponsored content on news sites, and it gets tricky. And then where sports betting comes in, you're talking about money, right? So conflating what's there for entertainment value with what might be, actionable wagering intel, if you will, can cost people money. I think SportsGrid does a really good job of really separating the two, right? When you're watching a show that's more about the personality, and I think they actually do a really good job also on sort of the data side. But it's a problem. It's almost about self-policing, about whether you're trying to serve your audience or whether you're really trying to just kind of draw them in.
Yeah, I think there is a firewall between media and betting right now that's getting smaller with each passing year. The question is, when will one of these big fish like an ESPN create their own 24-hour sports gambling network? Is that something that they want to do? I don't know what that looks like on social media. I know that digitally there's a lot of them now. Do you think, and I guess I'll open this up again, we got about two minutes left. Do you think social media is actually going to be a glass ceiling for gambling in a sense, because there's so much, I'll call it junk out there right now. It prevents from some of those really credible messages from getting out.
Yeah, well, I think the influencers on social media who want to get around that issue are ones that are going to leave social media and try to monetize their communities that they've already built and do it on their own. Because like you're saying, it's impossible to go to Instagram, go to TikTok, go to Twitter, and somehow filter out all the junk to find relevant content. But in the near future here, as social media continues to splinter, there are going to be platforms that pop up that deliver that relevant content, that are still staying on top of it through content creators. And so I think that's kind of where the direction of the industry is going to go.
Final minute, any closing words for our
I think
group
that's,
here?
it presents a big challenge for companies, because at the end of the day, all we're trying to do is we're trying to have engagement and grow our followers. And as a result of that, we're all just optimizing for the algorithms. So when it comes to social, that's why we see everything kind of goes to a singularity. Everything is feeds, and it's because we're so optimized that I think it is really challenging to try to port your audiences, or even move to a different platform to monetize, because on the internet, everything is beginning to look very similar.
Any other final parting words on our hashtag? We're the only panel that has a hashtag, by the way. That, to me, I think that's a compliment for us. But
No, but I think when you look at even representative of this panel, like none of these companies existed 10 years ago. And so I feel like a lot of this is still kind of trial and error. And there are lots of things that we're growing at the same time that the industry is growing, and things are coming together. And so I feel like there's still a lot more that will be optimized and that we'll learn in the coming months, coming years. So
that's great. I think we'll leave it there. Round of applause for our panelists. Thank you.
okay.